Hey guys, it's Leslie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm just gonna do a tag. I don't really have anything especially new from last week to talk about, like any books I finished or anything like that. So I figured I will just do a tag, and this is actually a book related tag for once. So go me! And this is the Future Classics book tag. I really like this. I like the questions on this. There's not too many. There's not really complicated like categories that I have to think of, you know, some character who does something really specific that I can never think of anything. So this one I think is really fun. So let's get started. Number 1, pick an established classic that you think will still be relevant in the future. For this, I'm going to pick The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I read this probably back in like 2007, somewhere around there, and I just remember really liking it. It's so creepy, and if you're not familiar with this book, it's about a man who essentially sells his soul so that he remains young and beautiful forever, but this picture of him ages based on the things that he does, and you know, he locks it in a closet, and that's basically the gist of it. But it's so interesting. It's an interesting commentary on just beauty, but also on morality and the choices that we make. But I think it's going to be relevant forever, especially, you know, I don't think obsession with beauty has really changed. It may just be more in our faces than it used to be, but when I talk to people and like 20-year-olds are getting Botox, I'm like, there's a serious issue. Like 20-year-olds have perfect skin. Perfect. So no need for Botox when you're 20, but whatever. Maybe I just don't get it. But anyway, I think anything dealing with beauty and that over time would be really interesting and still super relevant. Question 2. Pick a recent book which you feel has gone under the radar, but where you're confident will be a future classic. And this book I have not heard about on Booktube, or at least not very much. So for me, this is something that's under the radar. I definitely heard about it in Entertainment Weekly and a couple of other resources. So it's not completely like no one's heard of it, but it is called The Nix by Nathan Hill. This is a story about a man who is a writer, a struggling writer, who hasn't, like, his mother left him when he was really little, and one day he turns on the TV and sees that his mom is throwing rocks at a presidential candidate, and she becomes sort of this person in the media, and he is basically tasked with writing a tell-all about his mother, and he has to kind of uncover her life. And it's just like, it's a super pretty long book, but the writing is really fantastic. I myself gave this 3 stars because it gets kind of long and the ending reveal is kind of lame in my opinion, but the book itself is super interesting. It's super in depth, but it's funny, and I don't know, it's really good, and I think that people will really like it in the future. And if you haven't read it, I suggest checking it out. I really think it's a book that has a lot of layers and a lot of depth, and I honestly, now that I'm thinking about it again, I'm like, maybe I kind of want to reread it. So who knows, there might be that, but definitely a future classic that has been under the radar. Question 3. Pick a title that won one of your favorite book prizes recently, which you think will still be lauded in 50 years' time. I'm not super into book prizes. I honestly don't really pay attention to them. So I just did a little Google search on the books that I have read and which ones have won prizes, and turns out the book I really like won the Pulitzer Prize in 2015, which is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a World War II historical fiction book following a German soldier and a French girl who is blind, and sort of how their paths intertwine. And to me, the writing is really beautiful. I love this story. I flew through it. highly recommend it. I know some people think it's overrated, so there's that. Take that into account maybe, but I just think that it was really, really well written and for sure gonna be a classic from here on out. Question 4. Pick a recent book you haven't read yet, but which you think might become a classic based on reputation alone. And this is a book that I have wanted to read and for some reason just haven't picked up, and that is called Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. This is a memoir of a man who grew up in a super, super poor white area of maybe Virginia, somewhere in the southern states of the US. And he did become super successful, but it's all about sort of the struggle of like white poor communities, and apparently it's just an amazing, amazing book, and I have yet to read it. But I think it's going to be one that is talked about for a long time, just based on sort of in these overarching like themes of growing up really poor in a predominantly white area. What that means, what that looks like, to me, just sounds super interesting. And if you have read this book, let me know if it's good. I feel like there are people out here who have watched my channel that this book would be right up their alley. So I'll be surprised if there's somebody who's watching this who has not read it, but let me know if it's worth my time. And question 5, pick a favorite book that you want to save for your grandchildren to read in 50 years' time. This can be a children's book or an adult book. Anything you connect with personally that you hope a future generation will connect with too. And I picked 2 books for this, slightly cheating. The first one is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I read this last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago, and it's a slow burn book, and it's very character driven. If you don't like a book where like nothing really happens but a lot happens, that's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's really just following a family, particularly one girl named Francie, and just these situations that she goes through with growing up poor in New York. And I think it takes place in 20s or 30s, maybe even earlier. It could be like turn of the century, but I know it was published right around World War II because it was a super popular book that the soldiers read when they were overseas. And it's just such a good book. Again, like thinking about it now, I'm like, man, I kind of want to go reread that even though I just read it. But it's really touching. It's a great look at family life and, you know, what's important. So that one for sure, I think I would love for grandkids to read in 50 years' time. The other book is called The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. This is a memoir of Corrie ten Boom, who was in a concentration camp during World War II. She herself is not Jewish, but she was Christian, and she was hiding people, hence the hiding place, in her home along with her sister, well, the rest of her family. And it's just about her living through that time, and it's a redemption story, and it's just extremely powerful. If you've not read it, I highly recommend it. There are parts of it that are extremely hard to believe, like just on a lot of levels, like hard to believe a brutality, but hard to believe her opinion and how she can come to forgive some of these extreme atrocities. So it's such a good book, and I think it teaches us a lot about the human spirit and resilience and forgiveness. It's so crucial in this world, in this day and age. I think it's just necessary. So I definitely want my kids to read that in the future, or my grandkids, I guess. And yeah, that's the Future Classics tag. If you've not done this tag, do it. I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting to see what people think are books that they've read that are going to stand the test of time. So highly recommend it. I'm not going to really tag anyone because I guess this is an older-ish tag, and I'm not sure who's done it. I'm not sure. So anyway, those are the books that I think are top-notch. Definitely recommend. And I guess until next time, bye. I meant to say that I changed my channel name, I guess, just to my actual name, Leslie Ring, for the most part, I'm going to do book stuff, like 95%. But in the future, I may try to do some travel vlogs or, I don't know, probably nothing else besides that, but, or maybe even daily vlogs if I ever get like a nice camera. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Still gonna be mostly books, at least for the time being. If I ever decide to do anything else, maybe that'll change, but I just wanted to keep it as my name because it's just easier. It's just easier to change the account that I had it under to that. So that's really it. And if you heard any weird noises while this video is filming, my bedroom window's open and my kids were outside jumping on the trampoline. So that's that. But anyway, talk to you later. Bye.